Well, hello, friends, and welcome to the Two for Tuesday podcast brought to you by Second Round Music. I'm your host, Michael Present, and today we're going to take a ride on the Soul Train to a small town in North Alabama and Southwest Tennessee for a three-part journey into the Muscle Shoals sound. Now, part one will be a deep dive into Fame Studios. Part two will continue into the Muscle Shoals Sound Associates studio. And part three will end our journey in Memphis at Stax Records. Now, there will be some differences in these episodes in that I'll not be performing all the songs that I'll discuss, and for good reason. I mean, could you hear me trying to cover an Aretha Franklin song? Yeah, that ain't going to happen. These songs deserve better than that. Now, in the mid-1960s, an unlikely hit from a tiny studio in northwest Alabama put Muscle Shoals on the musical map. And in 1966, soul singer Percy Sledge recorded When a Man Loves a Woman in Sheffield, Alabama. Now, that's a stone's throw away from Muscle Shoals. And the passionate ballad shot to number one on the Billboard Hot 100 chart. That was the first number one hit recorded in the Muscle Shoals area, signaling that something special was brewing on the banks of the Tennessee River. And at the center of it was producer Rick Hall and his fledgling enterprise, Fame Studios. Now, that was an acronym for the Florence, Alabama Music Enterprises. Now, Hall had battled poverty and personal tragedy to establish Fame in 1959, and he was determined to make hit records in an unlikely place. So now in this episode, we're going to dive into how Rick Hall and the Muscle Shoals Rhythm Section, a group of local session players Hall had recruited, crafted a signature Muscle Shoals sound at Fame Studios. We'll explore Hall's partnership with legendary producer Jerry Wexler of Atlantic Records and recount the creation of two hallmark soul recordings, Percy Sledge's When a Man Loves a Woman and Aretha Franklin's I Never Loved a Man the Way I Loved You. Each song's journey reveals how the tiny southern studio became a crucible of pop, soul, and R&B music. But before we get started, let's listen to this sponsored message, and I'll catch you on the other side. Are you ready to take control of your finances and build a brighter future? Are you sick and tired of being sick and tired, feeling broke all the time? My name is Michael Present, a certified master coach, and I created Second Round Financial to provide personalized financial coaching based on the proven principles of Dave Ramsey's 7 Baby Steps. Our services include, but are not limited to, one-on-one financial coaching through Zoom conference or face-to-face, budgeting strategies, debt reduction plans, emergency fund creation, retirement planning, and investment guidance. Well, why choose us? Because we believe in empowering our clients with the knowledge and tools they need to achieve financial peace. With our guidance, you'll gain clarity over your financial situation, develop a realistic and achievable plan, and experience hope and confidence in your financial future. I have over 15 years experience teaching and guiding families in the Ramsey principles, along with a degree in finance and work experience in the banking and insurance industries. So let's get started today. Go to secondroundfinancial.com and click Book Now to schedule your free consultation today. Rick Hall's story is one of grit and vision. And in 1959, he co-founded Fame with partners in the small town of Florence, Alabama, above a drugstore. Now, before taking the sole ownership and moving the studio to nearby Muscle Shoals in 1961, Hall's early instincts proved to be right when Fame scored its first hit in 1961 with a local singer, Arthur Alexander, and his hit, You Better Move On. Now, it was a soulful ballad that caught fire nationally. Hall invested the proceeds to build a proper studio facility at 603 East Avalon Avenue in Muscle Shoals, which remains Fame's home even today. Now, from the unassuming building, Rick Hall fostered an integrated environment rare for the Deep South at that time. Black and white musicians creating music together. Now, that was unheard of in the 1960s. Now, the studio's first house band included talented local musicians like Norbert Putnam and Dave Briggs, who helped craft the early R&B gem. Now, as the 1960s progressed, Hall's roster and his reputation grew. Singer Jimmy Hughes gave Fame another hit with Steal Away in 1964, and Hall began drawing notable artists from across the region. Even before the world at large knew Muscle Shoals, insiders recognized that Hall had tapped into the heart-pounding, soul-shaking sound, as one writer later described it. One of Hall's early successes came via a partnership with a local DJ turned producer, Quinn Ivey, and that collaboration yielded When a Man Loves a Woman. Percy Sledge, an unknown hospital orderly turned singer from Alabama, poured raw emotion into this ballad. And the song was initially worked out at Fame Studios in Muscle Shoals with Hall's session players, including organist Spooner Oldham and drummer Roger Hawkins, before being re-recorded at Ivey's nearby studios in Sheffield, Alabama. Hall facilitated a deal with Atlantic Records to distribute the track nationally, and when released in spring of 1966, When a Man Loves a Woman became an instant classic, hitting number one on both the pop and R&B charts. It was the first chart-topping record ever to come out of Muscle Shoals, a milestone that announced the arrival of the Muscle Shoals sound to a wider world. Atlantic's producer Jerry Wexler was impressed. However, the road to number one wasn't without hiccups. Wexler initially asked for the horn parts to be re-recorded in tune, and Hall obliged. Yet through a mix-up, Atlantic ended up releasing the original tape, out-of-tune horns and all, and that became the hit. Such quirks only added to the lore. With its impassioned vocals and deep soul groove, When a Man Loves a Woman epitomized what could be known as the Muscle Shoals ethos, authentic blues-drenched feeling captured live in the studio. The song's success gave Rick Hall's operation credibility that money couldn't buy, and more hit makers soon came calling to fame. By the mid-1960s, Hall had assembled a crack team of session musicians at Fame, a group of young white Alabama boys who could play R&B with irresistible feel. Guitarist Jimmy Johnson, bassist David Hood, keyboardist Barry Beckett, and drummer Roger Hawkins became known as the Muscle Shoals Rhythm Section, and later earned the nickname the Swampers for their steamy, deep-grooving sound. These musicians had an almost telepathic tightness, and under Hall's demanding guidance, they churned out hit after hit. Fame quickly became a hit factory for soul and R&B artists. Wilson Pickett, the gritty soul shouter from Atlanta Records roster, was among the first major stars Jerry Wexler brought down south. And in 1966, Wexler drove down to Muscle Shoals with Pickett, seeking to capitalize on the region's soul streak. The result, a string of smashes produced by Hall at Fame, including Pickett's incendiary Land of a Thousand Dances, Mustang Sally, and Funky Broadway. Backed by the Muscle Shoals Rhythm Section, Pickett fused his tracks with raw energy. Mustang Sally, cut in late 1966, remains a soul anthem, propelled by the Swampers' infectious groove. The success of the Pickett sessions solidified the Fame Atlantic partnership, and Wexler became convinced that Rick Hall's studio had the magic. Indeed, Wexler later said that he viewed Fame as the secret weapon in recording Southern soul hits. Hall, for his part, prided himself in being an impresario who could unite talent across racial lines to make great records. In the Deep South of the 1960s, this integrated work environment was extraordinary. Fame sessions routinely featured black artists and white musicians collaborating at a time when segregation was still the norm outside the studio walls. Hall's insistence of chasing excellence above all else helped foster this progressive bubble in Muscle Shoals. Now, in January of 1967, Fame Studios hosted a session that would change music history, but it nearly ended in disaster. Aretha Franklin, a 24-year-old gospel-trained singer from Detroit, arrived in Muscle Shoals with Jerry Wexler. Franklin had spent years at Columbia Records without a hit, and Wexler had just signed her to Atlantic, convinced that recording in the South could unlock her potential. Rick Hall admittedly had never heard of her at that time, but welcomed the challenge. And on January 24, 1967, Aretha walked into Fame's modest Studio A, sat down at a piano, and began working on a slow bluesy number titled, "I'll Never Love a Man the Way I Loved You." As the session got underway, keyboardist Spooner Ullman started tinkering with a catchy Wurlitzer electric piano riff, and Aretha's own piano playing set the mood. When Aretha's voice finally soared into the refrain, "You're a no-good heartbreaker. I never loved a man the way I loved you," everyone in the room felt the electricity. It was as if the Queen of Soul was born right then and there. The normally hard-to-impress Rick Hall later admitted that he had doubts at first about the song's unusual waltz-like feel, but Aretha's talent was undeniable. "We're going to make it happen," Hall resolved, determined to deliver Wexler a hit. Indeed, what they captured was magic. "I Never Loved a Man" had a deep, slow-burning groove. Aretha's voice, supported by the Muscle Shoals players and pleading brass, came alive with unprecedented passion. It would become her first major hit, reaching number 9 on the Billboard Hot 100 chart and number 1 on the R&B chart, and effectively launching Aretha Franklin's reign as the Queen of Soul. Yet even as the music soared, chaos was brewing behind the scenes. Aretha's husband and manager, Ted White, accompanied her to Muscle Shoals, and his volatile jealousy nearly derailed the session. White brought a bottle of vodka into the studio control room and began drinking heavily, even sharing liquor with some of the horn players. And as the day wore on, tensions rose. At one point, White stormed into the control room and insisted to Rick Hall, "I want you to fire that trumpet player. He's making passes at my wife." Startled, Hall sent the trumpet player home to placate White. But White wasn't satisfied. Soon he accused another horn player, and that saxophonist was dismissed as well. The atmosphere had turned toxic. Musicians grew nervous as the word spread that something was amiss, and Wexler, sensing the session was unraveling, finally halted the proceedings midway through the recording of the second song, "Do Right Woman, Do Right Man." Aretha had only managed to fully record "I Never Loved a Man," with "Do Right Woman" still unfinished when the sessions came to an abrupt stop. The plan was to resume the next day after tempers cooled. But that night, however, Hall made a fateful decision. He drove to the hotel to confront White and try to smooth things over, despite Wexler's warning, "Please don't go. It'll be trouble." Hall's intervention backfired spectacularly, and an argument exploded between Hall and White, escalating into a physical fistfight in the motel corridor. When Wexler had arrived, he found his artist's husband brawling with his producer. Furious, Wexler pulled Aretha and White out of Muscle Shoals that very night, and he was quoted as saying, "I'm leaving this town, and I'll never be back. I'll bury you, Rick," which is what Rick reportedly stated after he left. Hall fired back in the heat of anger, and a bitter feud ignited between Fame's boss and Atlantic's top producer. The Aretha sessions at Muscle Shoals were almost over as soon as they began, just one song completed amid the chaos. Now, despite the turmoil, that one song was historic. "I Never Loved a Man the Way I Loved You" became Aretha Franklin's breakthrough single, a million seller that won her a Grammy and defined her sound going forward. Critics and fans alike could hear the difference. This was the moment Aretha's unparalleled vocal power met the sanctified Southern soul groove and struck gold. As bassist David Hood, one of the session players, later reflected, working with her was one of the highlights of my career. Hood noted that Aretha's shy, reserved demeanor in person melted away once she sat at the piano and started singing. Her piano feel guided the whole band. Indeed, it was Aretha's own musicianship meshing with the Swampers' instinct that saved the song. And after a slow start, according to Hood, Spooner Ullman's Wurlitzer riff fell into place and the horns answered, and Aretha's voice took flight. The result was a track for the ages. Now, ironically, Aretha Franklin never returned to Muscle Shoals to record. The bad blood from the fist fight ensured that. Jerry Wexler determined not to lose the Muscle Shoals sound entirely, though, and he solved that dilemma by flying the famed musicians up to New York to finish Aretha's album. There, at Atlantic's New York studios, the same Alabama boys cut the remainder of Aretha's first Atlantic album with her, including Do Right Woman, Do Right Man, replicating the famed studio chemistry in a new setting. The album title, I Never Loved a Man the Way I Loved You, became a smash and won the 1967 Grammy for the Best R&B Recording. And it was clear that Muscle Shoals had been the catalyst for Aretha's rebirth as the Queen of Soul. But for Rick Hall, the triumph was bittersweet. He had midwifed an era-defining hit, only to see his relationship with Atlantic collapse in the wake. The Aretha Franklin episode sent shockwaves through the Muscle Shoals camp, and Jerry Wexler indeed stayed true to his word. In the short term, he boycotted Fame Studios and took his projects elsewhere. Now, Rick Hall suddenly found Atlantic's steady stream of top-tier R&B clients drying up. But to Hall's credit, to keep Fame thriving through sheer hustle and new partnership. And in the late 1960s, he recorded Etta James's fiery Tell Mama album, another career highlight for that legendary singer, and he developed local talent like Clarence Carter, who scored hits with Slip Away and Patches under Hall's production. Hall even branched into pop and country. Notably, he attracted the Osmond brothers to record at Fame in 1970, and that yielded a #1 pop hit, One Bad Apple, among others. But a significant change was brewing within Fame's walls, and by 1969, Rick Hall's ace rhythm section, the Swampers, decided to break away and start their own studio. The Aretha incident had exposed fissures. Some say the musicians resented the conflict with Wexler and wanted more control and share of the studio's prosperity. And with encouragement and financial backing from Wexler, Barry Beckett, Roger Hawkins, Jimmy Johnson, and David Hood left Fame to found the rival Muscle Shoals Sound Studios across town. Now, this marked the end of an era at Fame and the beginning of another chapter, which we're going to explore in the next episode. Now, Rick Hall, never wanted to be outdone, simply retooled his new players and kept making hits. He famously landed a distribution deal with Capitol Records, and he even produced the Osmonds to multi-platinum success in the early 1970s. Now, the rivalry between Hall and the departed Swampers remained largely under the surface, but it spurred both camps to even greater heights. Hey guys, thank you for listening today, and I hope you're enjoying this podcast. If you are, please subscribe or follow the podcast, click the like button, share it with other music lovers, and please consider giving it a 5-star rating so we can reach a bigger audience. Now back to the show. The story of Fame Studios is one of an American original, a place where, quote, through these doors walk the finest musicians, songwriters, artists, and producers in the world, end quote, as the sign above Fame's entrance proudly proclaims. And in the 1960s, Rick Hall's relentless drive and vision built a studio that transcended racial barriers and economic limitations to produce era-defining music. Songs like When a Man Loves a Woman and I Never Loved a Man the Way I Loved You captured lightning in a bottle, the pure soulful sound of Muscle Shoals and proved that a small-town studio could revolutionize pop music. By bringing black and white musicians together in Alabama during a time of segregation, Hall and his team at Fame also provided a quiet but powerful example of unity through music. The Muscle Shoals sound would go on to influence countless recordings and attract superstar artists to Alabama. But it all started with Rick Hall at Fame. His legacy is heard in every chord and every chorus that came out of that humble studio. As Hall himself later reflected on those years, quote, "Any discussion about American music that doesn't include Muscle Shoals isn't really a discussion at all," end quote. The hits and the history made at Fame Studios ensures that Muscle Shoals will forever hold a place as a small town with a big sound, where a handful of people, implored by a generation of musicians to travel south in search of that magic. And indeed, the magic was just the beginning. The next chapter of the Muscle Shoals saga would see that famed rhythm section forged their own path in studio, taking the Shoals sound to new heights. So there you have it. And thank you for joining me today for the 2 for Tuesday podcast with Michael Present of Second Round Music. I hope you enjoyed it. Let me know your thoughts. I'd love to hear from you. Just type your comments below if you're listening on YouTube, or drop me an email and give me your recommendations for future artists or songs. Don't forget to subscribe, follow this podcast, click the like button, and share it with all your music-loving friends. So just remember, we love you and we need you. And tune in next week for part 2 as we continue to explore the stories behind the music we love. God bless you.